Here at UWC, we are here to use education as a force to unite people, nations, and cultures towards a peaceful and sustainable future. To put it simply, we are here for the future. We are in the business of change-making. Now, in all this hustle and bustle of actually trying to make a change, trying to make a difference into the world, there's a question that has been bothering me, which is, what is the changed world we're making? You know, change as a word is something which is void of meaning. Change is simply a difference that we make into the world. So, apartheid was a change. The atomic bomb was a change. Revolutions are a change. But in contrast, the civil rights movement was a change. The suffragettes were a change. Climate protests are a change. So, how do we know that we're making the right changes? The question, to put it very simply, is what makes this change good and this change bad? So, throughout history, we have made a lot of changes, some good, some bad. But the problem is, when we do make bad changes, like this, we lock them into the darkest crevices of humanity, and they are very much the darkest and most horrible things we have done. But what I want us to consider today is that every person in this photo is human. And they are like you or me. It's not as if humanity had a sudden wave of psychopathy and everyone lost their morals for a second. Every single person here had their own morals. They were like you or me. They had their own beliefs, aspirations, values, and very unfortunately, their own ignorances. These movements had supporters and dissidents. These supporters and dissidents were people, and they weren't good or evil, they were just incredibly normal. So, when we are making a change, how can we be sure that we are not going to go down as yet another example of the great capacity of humanity to do evil? How are we to know that what we are doing is good? Now, I consider myself an activist, and activism can be incredibly divisive. We have made millions of words and categories, all to distinguish one's personal philosophy and politics. But ultimately, these words, these terms, they are a confession unto the world of how you view it and how you wish for it to change. Now, if we go back in time and look at the civil rights movement, which in my mind is a great example of a successful activist movement, we can learn something. So, the civil rights movement was not only able to change the laws in America, but they were also able to change the people's hearts and minds in regards to the status of African Americans. Now, obviously, there is still a lot of work to do, but it has succeeded to a great extent. And a story from its long history that is particularly impactful to me is that of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a child from Chicago, and he had gone down to Mississippi to visit his relatives. He was told to be careful of how he acted in Mississippi because it would be very different than how he could act in Chicago. Now, unfortunately, while in Mississippi, he committed a horrible crime. He whistled at a white woman. And for this horrible crime, he received the death penalty. A group of men beat this 14-year-old child to death. This story sparked an outcry all across America, which was sparked by the love and pain of his mother, Mrs. Mamie Till Bradley. Now I'm going to show you the pictures which she put into every newspaper in America. These are graphic, but it's incredibly important to look at this. That is the image of a child who was brutally beaten. Now, what this story did all across America was it tapped into the empathy of the humans. You cannot look at this photo and agree with it. You cannot look at the bruised body of a 14-year-old child and believe that you live in a society of any morality. And that is what happened. What I find so important about Emmett Till's story is that it showed how even in a time like that, you are still able to tap into the basic empathy of human beings. I believe in two fundamental truths of humanity. I believe that humans have a great capacity for kindness and a great intolerance of evil. Now, if we are to bring this to the modern day and look at activism that is happening now, we can look at feminism. Feminism is an increasingly complex and controversial field, and the feminists would not understand why it is seen as so controversial. The basic idea is equity for women, right? Why are they seen as being supposedly anti-men? Although this idea is ridiculous to a feminist, I believe that it makes a lot more sense if you put yourselves in the shoes of a man who, although uneducated about the complex systems of patriarchal oppression and history that women have had to face, is incredibly educated on how to be a man. He has got a life's experience, after all. This man hears the feminists, and the message he understands is that men are the problem. The patriarchy is the problem. Why is he a problem? He thinks to himself. Why am I hurting people? How am I hurting people? I'm a good guy, right? He's not able to understand how he has hurt people. He thinks of his own suffering. He thinks of his own pain. And he is unable to understand why all of a sudden he is immoral. In fact, you will never be able to convince himself that he is immoral. And when you are attacking someone without explanation, you are making their only logical answer to be a defense. So, this rhetoric is incredibly evident when it comes to listening to the voices of men like Andrew Tate, who are a platform for men who feel unnecessarily attacked in society. When you attack the identity of individuals, their only recourse is a self-defense, because no one will ever see themselves as fundamentally evil. That is not something we can change, and I genuinely do not believe that anything as a fundamental evil exists. We must work towards connecting to the human. If you are able to create a dialogue, if you are able to talk and discuss and learn from each other, then you can change the person without them feeling the need to fight back. At our present time, we stand upon the shoulders of giants who have changed the world. If Daryl Davis, a black musician, could befriend members of the KKK and help them see the errors of their ways, if Mahatma Gandhi could rail against the colonial systems of oppression with peaceful protest, if Mrs. Till could expose the horrors of racism through the tragedy of her son, then I believe we can make a better tomorrow by learning from their lessons and standing atop their shoulders. We must work on talking to one another. We are here today to talk about Trinith, the day after tomorrow. My day after tomorrow is one where we make changes by talking to each other and by healing from it. Because when we talk, we will listen. And when we listen, we will change. And if the change we are making is worth anything, then we will be able to make people listen. Thank you.